Hey guys, I'm going to be reading from Red Kayak chapter 23 today. In chapter 22, Brady asked his dad if he would hook up the oyster dredger and go and try and haul the red kayak out of the river. Brady's hopeful that there's no holes in it, though. Let's see what happens today in this chapter, chapter 23. We did not waste time. Crack of dawn the next morning, we made our way down to the creek where a thick mist rose above the still, dark waters. A great blue heron squawked at us for making too much noise and, indignant, took off from a nearby bank as we boarded my father's boat. Miss Amanda's deck was slick with dew. We stepped carefully so not to slip as we settled the gear on board. Easy now, remember, this ain't no hot rod, Dad warned, handing me the key. Hot rod. Only my dad would say something like that. I'll be careful, I called back over my shoulder as I went up front to turn the key in the ignition. Once the engine was running, I adjusted the radar controls on board the boat while my father reached over to the dock and cast off the lines. Go ahead, Dad hollered as he tossed the last line into the boat. Leaning into the front window, I looked hard to port to be sure I was clearing the last piling as we pulled out. Dad went to work getting the grapnel hook ready. He didn't think it was necessary to use the oyster dredger. I was glad because it would have taken most of a day and a half to get that contraption hooked up. Dad said that if the kayak was still there, we could snare it with the grapnel hook, which was actually an extra anchor he kept on board. It had several pointy flukes on it, so if it caught hold, we could wrap the lines around the machine that acts like a high powered winch to pull in crab pots and hoist it up that way. I hadn't slept much, but I was alert and pumped full of adrenaline. Finding the kayak and getting the truth out once and for all was my mission. It didn't matter what kids at school thought or what happened afterward, it was something I had to do. The motor hummed as we moved out, the only boat on the creek. Heavy gray clouds obscured the sunrise, and a few raindrops already warned us it wasn't going to be a beautiful day, but I didn't care. We needed the rain. It was long overdue, I thought, lifting my eyebrows just as what I was doing was long overdue. When Dad came forward and took over steering, I went back to sit on the engine box. We entered the Corsica and then went directly to the opposite bank and the opening off the river where I had discovered Ben and where I had spotted the sunken kayak last April. As soon as I saw the rotten pilings jutting out of the water, the events of last April tumbled forward in my mind and my stomach lurched. Backing off the throttle, Dad carefully maneuvered the boat through the narrow channel along the sandbar, and then he threw the boat in neutral and came back toward me. I stood at the side, staring into the water near the tip of the sandbar. Right there, I said glumly, pointing and already disappointed. That's where I saw the kayak last April. We both leaned over the edge, trying to get a better look. Although it was starting to sprinkle, the water was clear and shallow enough that we could see the sandy bottom. But there was no sign of the kayak, nor any part of it. The feeling in my stomach got worse. I'd always known that there was a good possibility that we wouldn't find it. Are you sure it was here? Dad asked. Positive, I replied. The scowl on my forehead deepened. Why didn't you say something about it last spring? Dad asked. I shook my head. I didn't think it mattered then. My father didn't ask why it mattered now. He walked forward to a second set of gear shifts on the back of the boat and moved her up a few feet. Again, both of us peered into the river, but the water was deeper and darker too. We couldn't see a thing. Plus, the rain came harder, churning the surface. Not the best day to be doing this, Dad commented. Please, can we just look a little longer? I begged. Dad sighed, and then he put a foot up on the railing, studied the water. Brady, isn't this the old fishing hole where you and JT and Digger used to come? Place was right smart of fish, if I remember correctly. It is, I acknowledged. Remember I told you we went swimming here? On the other side of the sandbar. It drops off big time. Most of that old dock was here then. We could climb up and dive off. While he listened, Dad rubbed his chin with one hand the way he does when he's thinking hard on something. This is where she tried to come in, right? Right, I told him. She put Ben on that piling, the one over there, and then she got pulled back out by the current. Dad nodded. Well, the tides are strong coming in and out of this channel, especially in the spring. You think the kayak went out with the tide then? I asked. Dad stopped rubbing his chin and he resettled his hat. Not necessarily. I think what you got here, Brady, is a littoral drift. Literal what? What's that? No, littoral drift, he repeated. Look, he took his foot down, pointed behind us, and swept his finger back and forth. Tides coming in and out this opening here push the sand up along the edge, creating a sandbar. But as the waves come around the corner, you get this swirling effect. It creates a backwater eddy, a dimple, if you will. And that would be your swimming hole. I'd wager to guess that if the kayak sank anywhere near that sandbar, it got sucked right down that hole. Well, let's drop the pole and see. Slow down. Yeah, we got to move closer to that, and I don't want you running aground, Brady. Carefully, we inched the Miss Amanda around the sandbar without beaching her till we were directly above the deep water. Dad set out anchors so we wouldn't drift and run aground, and then he fetched the pole that we brought along and slowly lowered it into the water to feel around down below. Didn't take long. Dad hit something right off, something hard and long. We pulled in the pole and threw out the grappling hook, watched the attached rope spin from its coil to the boat floor. Whew, must be 15, 20 feet down, Dad declared. He bounced the hook up and down till he felt it catch hold. You ready to start hauling in? I'm ready, I said. All right, let's go. Dad wrapped the line around the bar of the machine that pulls in the crab pots and started moving it slowly. It hummed and made a grating noise. I stood beside my father and waited, holding my breath, until we saw something break through the surface. It was a grill. Somebody's dang old Weber grill. Must have fallen off the old dock, Dad said. Shoot, I muttered. After hauling that piece of junk over the side, I kicked it. Can we try again, Dad? A little puzzled, he shrugged anyway. Sure. We heaved the anchor back in. When it landed, Dad pulled on the line a few times till he felt as though he hooked something else. Again, the machine did its work, but after a minute or so, it ground to a stop. What's wrong? I asked. Dad shook his head. I don't know. Is it too heavy? Shouldn't be, but maybe, he said. If it's the kayak, it could be full of sand. He tried to get the machine started, but no luck. Here, grab the line and we'll haul it in, he said. I stood behind my father, and each of us got a hold of the rope. And then, hand over fist, we pulled. It took all the strength each of us had, and then some. I was bracing myself to see a dumb tree branch or a cement block somebody had tossed in to anchor a buoy come up. So when I saw the tip of the dirty red kayak break the surface, I was ready to cry with relief. Look at there, Dad exclaimed. I'll be darned. Finding it this easy, I knew it was meant to be. The kayak started slipping, though. Don't let go, Dad shouted. I jammed my feet against the gunnels and pulled as hard as I could. Hold on, he shouted. And with one more tug, Dad was able to reach over the side, catch the opening of the kayak with his hands. I did the same, and the two of us pulled with everything that we had. The kayak weighed a ton because it was full of water and covered with slimy mud and algae, but we got it up over the rail. Watch out, Dad hollered. Jumping back, we let it drop heavily inside the boat. We were whipped from the effort. Dad sat on the engine box while I knelt on the floor. Tried to catch my breath, all the time staring at the kayak, which hadn't landed bottom up, or which had landed bottom up. Water and sand dripping onto Miss Amanda's deck. A tiny crab fell out and skittered into a corner. The steady, gentle rain felt good on my face. The other thing rain did, gradually washed away the gunk from the underside of the kayak. In slow motion, right before our eyes, little rivulets of rainwater pushed aside the slime until we could see, my dad and I, how 3 holes had been drilled into the bottom. Dad didn't say anything at first. He got up and then squatted beside the kayak, touching 2 of the holes before he looked at me. He wore a pained expression I'll never forget. What is this, Brady? He asked. I swallowed hard, and with Dad in front of me, one of his hands still resting on the kayak's hull and the rain pouring down, I told him. I told him everything. And that is the end of chapter 23. So Brady has now told his dad everything that's happened with JT and Digger. And so we're going to see what happens as we continue on. We have a few more chapters to go, and we're going to get this book done before the end of the year. Please answer today's question. Answer it to the best of your ability. Do all your homework and have a great day.